When Shane Van Gisbergen first arrived in NASCAR, the verdict from the paddock and fans alike was swift and unanimous. He was labeled a pure road course specialist, an oval liability with his championship ceiling permanently capped at mediocrity. Then the Easter weekend data from NASCAR Insights dropped, and the entire narrative shattered overnight. The adjusted points plus index numbers do not lie, and what they reveal is a profound transformation unfolding in real time, one that most observers are still missing completely. SVG is now performing above average on drafting tracks. He's above average on short tracks. And on regular ovals, the very surface where he was catastrophically below the Cup Series benchmark just 12 months earlier, he's closing the gap at a rate that has multiple champions sitting up and taking serious notice. This is no longer about raw potential or future promise. This is about measurable, quantifiable dominance being constructed one oval lap at a time. Shane Van Gisbergen came to America from Auckland, New Zealand, carrying credentials that would drop the jaw of any serious motorsport enthusiast. 3 Australian Supercars championships, 80 career wins, 3 Bathurst 1000 victories, a win in the Bathurst 12-hour, and a podium finish at the 24 Hours of Daytona. This was never some unknown gamble chasing an American dream. This was a world-class driver who had already conquered everything road racing could possibly throw at him. Then came 2023 at the Chicago Street Course, NASCAR's very first Cup Series race on city streets. SVG won his first-ever Cup start, becoming the first driver since Johnny Rutherford in 1963 to claim victory on debut. In a single afternoon, he transformed into the hottest property in all of motorsports, and Trackhouse Racing immediately opened the door to a full-time future. The plan looked logical and sound on paper. Spend 2024 learning the nuances of American racing in the Xfinity Series, then step up to Cup full-time in 2025. The Xfinity season delivered precisely what it promised: 3 wins, a 12th-place finish in the standings, and enough polished racecraft to make Cup success feel inevitable. But the limited Cup starts he made on ovals that same year painted a far more sobering picture. His best result was 26th at Darlington. Warning signs flashed bright red, yet almost nobody wanted to acknowledge them because his road course dominance felt absolute, almost gravitational. SVG himself understood the massive gap better than anyone. He stated it plainly and without excuses: you have to go into the corners flat out, land in the banking, and simply trust the car. At that stage he did not yet know how to do it, and he admitted the driver was the problem. 2025 became the season that brutally exposed just how steep that learning curve truly was. On road courses, SVG remained untouchable. He won 5 of the 6 road course races on the schedule. At Mexico City, he cruised to victory by more than 16 seconds, the largest winning margin in the Cup Series in more than 15 years. At Sonoma, he led 97 of 110 laps. He repeated the masterclass at Chicago. He dominated at Watkins Glen and the Charlotte Roval. By his 38th career start, he already had 5 Cup wins. The last driver to reach 5 wins that quickly was Dan Gurney back in 1968. On paper, it looked like a clear championship trajectory, but championships are not decided on road courses alone. They are contested across 36 races, and the overwhelming majority of those are run on ovals. The early 2025 oval results were devastating: 31st at Phoenix, 34th at Las Vegas, 32nd at Homestead. For much of the first half of the season, he remained stuck outside the top 30 in points, dropping as low as 33rd before the massive Mexico City win pulled him back into relevance. SVG described that stretch with raw honesty: one of the toughest starts to any kind of racing I have ever had. His crew chief Stephen Doran was only in his second Cup season, meaning both driver and engineer were learning together in the deepest end of the pool. Later, SVG reflected on that difficult period with the kind of candor that makes him impossible not to respect. We went through a lot of frustration, but nobody was angry at each other. We just knew we had a lot to learn. By the final stretch of 2025, faint cracks of light began to appear. His first oval top 10 finish arrived at Kansas in September. He ran 11th at Talladega and 14th at Martinsville. He captured Rookie of the Year in a landslide and punched his ticket to the playoffs. Yet the fundamental, terrifying question still hung unanswered: could he actually become good at ovals? If the answer was no, if this was his permanent ceiling, then he would never be more than a road course mercenary, collecting 6 wins a year while watching the championship fight play out without him. The entire 2026 season would ultimately hinge on whether that answer turned out to be yes. 7 races into 2026, the data is screaming yes. At the Daytona 500, SVG qualified 13th, led 3 laps, and was running comfortably inside the top 10 before another driver's crash collected him. He finished 30th, but the underlying speed was undeniable. At Atlanta, he delivered his best oval finish to date with a 6th-place result, and he achieved it after slicing through the infield grass twice during the race. That single performance catapulted him from 28th all the way to 16th in the standings. At COTA, the road course, he finished second behind Tyler Reddick, ending his 5-race road course winning streak just one short of tying Jeff Gordon's record of 6 consecutive victories. He still banked 48 points and surged all the way up to 5th in the standings. At Phoenix, he spun twice yet recovered strongly to finish 11th. At Las Vegas, terrible luck struck early. He slid onto the apron on the opening lap, damaged his splitter, and spent the rest of the afternoon fighting a broken car to a last-place finish. Then came Darlington, and the steady progression became impossible to ignore. He finished 14th. That result may not sound flashy until you place it in full context. In 2024, he finished 26th at Darlington, in 2025 he improved to 20th, and now in 2026 he has advanced to 14th. This is not random variance. This is systematic, measurable improvement happening in full public view. At Martinsville, he started 5th, ran inside the top 10 for most of the afternoon, collected stage points in both stages, and finished 11th. The team rolled an aggressive pit strategy that momentarily lifted him all the way to second behind Chase Elliott. Afterward, SVG called it an awesome day, noting that starting up front makes the racing flow much cleaner and more manageable. He currently sits 14th in the Cup Series standings with only one top 5 finish all season, yet he has reached that position through pure consistency. He is sitting exactly on the playoff bubble, right where he needs to be to secure a spot in the top 16 and earn a chase berth. The NASCAR Insights data released over the Easter break simply confirmed what the on-track results had already been suggesting. Using their adjusted points plus index, which compares a driver's finishes against the Cup Series average benchmark of 100, SVG is now above average on both drafting tracks and short tracks. Even on regular ovals where he remains technically below the series average, he is dramatically closer than he was in 2025, when his numbers languished at a dismal 45 on the points index and 47.8 on driver rating. The statistical leap is not subtle. It is a canyon-sized jump that validates everything the eye test has been shouting for the past 3 months. The competition has noticed too, and they are not staying silent. Denny Hamlin, the clear betting favorite for the 2026 championship, stated it directly. The trend is continuing that SVG keeps getting better. Elite, superior drivers find a way to adapt. That is not empty praise from a political ally. It is recognition from arguably the best driver in NASCAR right now that SVG is turning into a legitimate threat. Chase Elliott, the 2020 champion, was not surprised in the slightest. He said SVG has a great feel for natural balance behind the wheel, and that is a really big deal. Christopher Bell was even more blunt. SVG is clearly getting the hang of it, and it is not going to be long before he becomes a factor on an oval. Bell added a fascinating point that the current weekend format with only 20 minutes of practice is actually slowing SVG's development. If NASCAR still ran the old format with hours of practice, Bell believes SVG would already be even further along. Even Joey Logano, a 3-time champion, gave credit where it was due. He has obviously had a pretty solid start and he is doing a good job. Ross Chastain, SVG's teammate at Trackhouse Racing, can already envision the future. Chastain said he could picture rugby balls flying over the grandstands at an oval track someday, nodding to SVG's signature victory celebration. That is not mere teammate loyalty. That is someone watching the relentless work happening behind closed doors and knowing exactly what is coming. The internal numbers at Trackhouse tell their own clear story. SVG is unmistakably the strongest performer on the team right now. Chastain sits 5 spots behind him in the standings and has only one top 15 finish all season. SVG has finished ahead of Chastain in 5 of the 7 races run so far. Rookie Connor Zilisch, who dominated with 10 Xfinity wins the previous year, is enduring his own brutal learning curve at the Cup level. NASCAR insider Eric Estep called SVG's development one of the steepest learning curves in the garage right now and labeled him Trackhouse's most impressive performer to date. What makes this entire story resonate far beyond the statistics is the genuine humility SVG carries through every moment. When asked if an oval win might be coming soon, he refused to fuel the hype machine. Instead, he answered honestly, "I am a long way from that. I do not want to win with luck. I want to earn it." He continued, "I am learning things and feeling big improvements every week. I know what is going on now rather than just being a deer in headlights, but I am still a little bit away from a win." That level of self-awareness, that refusal to declare victory before the hard work is truly finished, makes him impossible not to root for. He's not out here talking championships while sitting 14th in points. He's keeping his head down, putting in the work, and letting the results do the talking. The 2026 season carries higher stakes than most realize. NASCAR has brought back the classic chase format, which means there is no safety net anymore. The pressure is amplified, the margins are thinner, and SVG must navigate an unforgiving new playoff system while still mastering the most difficult discipline in American motorsports. He currently sits 14th, right on the playoff bubble. He needs to stay inside the top 16 to make the chase, and he is one bad race away from slipping out or one strong run away from locking it in. Road courses will continue to keep him competitive and stacking points, but the ovals will ultimately decide whether he becomes a true championship threat or remains only a specialist who collects wins on twisty circuits. The broader implications of this transformation reach far beyond one driver's career. We are watching in real time whether an elite driver can successfully adapt to a completely different racing discipline at the absolute highest level. The question has always existed in theory, but SVG is now supplying quantifiable, measurable, week-by-week data that proves it is possible. Every oval race adds another data point. Every 14th place finish at Darlington, every 11th at Phoenix, every 6th at Atlanta becomes fresh evidence that elite talent can transfer across racing styles, provided the driver is willing to be humbled, willing to learn, willing to admit what he does not know, and willing to work until he does. There's also the international dimension that adds extra weight. A driver from New Zealand is taking on America's toughest racing series, learning the one discipline Americans have long claimed as their own, and earning genuine respect from the NASCAR establishment through nothing but raw work ethic and talent. It is a global motorsport perspective colliding with American tradition, and instead of rejection, there is acknowledgement. The champions are saying it out loud. He is getting there, he is figuring it out, and when he fully does, the entire competitive landscape will shift. The projection is what keeps this story gripping every single week. If the current trajectory holds, where does SVG finish 2026? Does he score his first oval top 5 finish before summer? Does he steal an oval win this season when strategy and circumstances align while he is running top 5 late in the race? Is a championship genuinely within reach in 2027 or 2028 once he masters ovals while preserving his total road course dominance? What does the Cup Series look like when a single driver can win 5 or 6 road courses a year and suddenly compete for wins on ovals as well? That is no longer a hypothetical exercise. That is the reality NASCAR is now staring directly in the face. 7 races into 2026, the answer to whether Shane van Gisbergen can conquer ovals is becoming undeniable. He is not there yet, he will be the first to tell you that himself, but the gap is closing fast. The data confirms what the eyes are seeing, the competition openly acknowledges it, and the trajectory is pointing straight up. SVG arrived in NASCAR as a road course specialist. He is steadily evolving into something far more complete. The question is no longer if he will win on an oval. The question is when. And that changes everything.